Hello and welcome to the Trent Valley Railway. In this video we'll be looking at the rebuild for the removable baseboard section, now known as the lift out sections, for entering and exiting the layout in the garage. This video is part of a series of videos which details the build of the Trent Valley Railway, and this video here will look at the reconstruction of this section in front of the garage door. This work here has taken a couple of months to complete throughout 2019, and we'll now take a look back at how and why I've rebuilt this section of the layout. So it was partly down to the flooring at the garage entrance, and also that for the removable baseboard was not quite matching up here with the track joins. When I was having a look at testing more trains, I got more derailments here. This is then where I've made the decision to modify the removable baseboard section, which we'll talk about in the next part. That was a quick reminder of the removable baseboard section, where I had the locks in place and the wheels on that section there to move it in and out of the garage to access the layout. And then looking back in the April 2019 layout update, I included a short piece in that video on how I'd constructed the removable baseboard section and started laying the track down. And also as part of that update, I looked at some of the testing that I'd done for the rolling stock. I had the Network Rail 08 shunter there with a few wagons, which was fine. But then the issue started when I'd looked at the Pendolino and saw that the gap between the removable section and the fixed board sections weren't quite aligning, particularly around the corners. And then changed it once, and I've now taken the decision to change it again, but change the idea of the removable baseboard section to not be as big as it previously was. So first up, we'll have a look at how it used to operate with a Class 68 running across this section of the layout. So first up, we have just a view on where I wanted to cut the removable baseboard sections to create what is now a smaller baseboard that would fit and lift out as I then entered and exited the garage. Once happy with this, I took up the track work and started to cut down the old removable baseboard section, recycled those old baseboard sections on either side to extend out the fixed sections of the layout, and then create the support posts and framework as per the rest of the layout for these add-on sections by the garage door. The same was then applied on the other side, and then I started looking at how I would create those connections and the framework now to join up the two fixed parts of the layout with the new smaller removable baseboard sections. I then put the track work back down for these new sections, and here you see that the smaller section is also cut down compared to the much wider section that I had previously, because I didn't need the track across that part of the removable baseboard section. I'll show you in the video update in a minute how the connections and removable sections now work, and I've also started to look at the framework for the first incline above that new removable baseboard section that I've got, looking at coming across from the incline on one side, building the framework for the bridge, and then joining it up with the incline on the other side in the same way that the old removable baseboard section had those two bits joined up. So the update so far has taken us through the reconstruction of the two sides, which are now fixed, and this part will look at in more detail the connections for the sections that are removable and how the power continues through the section that is missing at the moment on the screen. The first noticeable benefit with the new approach here is that the garage door is much easier to access when it's shut, and I can turn the handle there and open the garage door. And alongside this, I've put in a much neater piece of the flooring which I showed you earlier on in the update, previously had the lines separated down that for the old removable baseboard to be wheeled in and out of the garage, but I've now got a flat section there which is very neatly in between the two fixed sections of the layout, so I can walk in and out of the garage without creating any more dust. There's still work to do on the inclines for the other sections across here, and putting those back into how they were before, but looking in detail here at then the fiddle yard level, which is the lower level of the layout, and those tracks that come around the corner from the fiddle yard, you'll see where the old join used to be for the old removable baseboard section that was on wheels. This had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tracks across there, and particularly it was this sort of concrete sleepered one on the very far right, which was causing the issues and the derailments, as well as some of the other tracks. And I've now changed this down to 4, and lessons learnt from the old removable baseboard section is to try and keep these on a straight section of track, and I've done that across 3 of those. And I've got one that's on a straight piece of track, but it is on a slight diagonal coming towards then what is the point on the removable baseboard section for the lower level of the layout. The same can be said here for the other side of the what is now also included on the fixed part of the layout. I've kept that 3-way point where it was previously. I did have then 4 connections on the old removable baseboard section. I've now got 2, so that's reduced that likelihood of a derailment down there. The main issue I had on this side was the actual siding that's in the middle of the running lines, so the wooden sleeper there that peels off on the right hand side of that 3-way point. It just didn't like it in terms of the sort of reverse curves around there and then going round into the siding, but that's now a lot better, as that's a continuous rail now across that join. For a while I was puzzled and sort of trying to think about how this new section that basically now lifts out and is removable from the rest of the layout, how it could connect into the wiring, but also at the same time be fixed into position, because that was one of the main problems with the old removable baseboard, was that it slightly moved around, didn't quite line up with the old tracks on the edges, and that then caused the derailment. So one of the main things in redesigning and rebuilding this section here now is to make sure that it doesn't move. Now I've done this through using terminal blocks, but not just the normal terminal blocks, ones that have basically male and female push pins into and out of those terminal blocks, and cut them down into pairs of 2, put one on either side, first of all of the fixed section, and then also there's the corresponding 2 on the other side as well, and this then translates to having the male connection on the actual removable lift out piece. That slots into those 2 holes. I've screwed it in and that doesn't move, and this creates quite a nice finish, which I'll show you now by putting the removable baseboard section into this gap now that we have here. I've made this section here as light as possible so that it's quite easy to put in and take out. It also won't put too much weight onto the timber sections that I've got hanging off the fixed sections there, and this is then what this removable section now looks like, with the 2 tracks for that end there on the left, and the 4 tracks on the right. What this also includes on here is the protective foam barriers that I've put on there previously to stop anything that may derail and land fall off down towards the garage floor. It was quite difficult to turn that around with one hand, so here is then the back of that board, which has got all of the wiring in there. It's also got the point motors installed, and has got basically the DCC bus wire connecting into, first of all, the 2 male pins at that end of the board, and the same as well if I bring it over with the right hand side of the board here as well. It's also got ready the sort of DCC point motor decoder box there, which will then be sort of fed from the other 2 pins at the other end of the board. And I'll now show you how easy this is to slot in here. And it's as simple as that, compared to how I previously had to roll in and out the removable baseboard section. This is a much simpler, neater solution, and the rails line up exactly spot on after a bit of tweaking with where that support post needs to sit on the fixed sections of the layout. After the successful rebuild for the lower level of the baseboard and the fiddle yard there, I've used the same principles on the section above. However, this time I've only got just the 1 terminal blocks on either end here. I've put some screws in either side of those terminal blocks so that they don't spin around and move, because this doesn't have any points on this section. This will just be plain line track. But again, once I get up to the incline and putting down more cork underlay and getting the track down, this is a similar, has again a very lightweight frame to it, and has the male connections at either end, and this one will also just very simply slot in like that. And next part of the build here is to do the other 2 sections that are now missing, which is for the other incline. So there's one that comes across down the left where the track is and meets up with the baseboard that's just coming out from underneath on the right hand side, and then the second one is the very top left hand corner of the screen, having a section that comes all the way across to the upper level of the layout. What I've got to do here is rebuild the framework to support those inclines. This is the very top incline meeting with the upper level of the baseboards here, and I've got the first part screwed in place for the baseboards that join up with then the lift out section, which needs to go into this gap here. Now that wooden post there is going all the way across to the wall as just a sort of propping up the incline that needs to come across from the curved section there and up until meeting up with the upper level of the layout. I've completed this section on this side, screwed in some more wooden beams underneath this bit of baseboard, and I'm now progressing across here and just at the moment replicating the same structure on this side to support a new shorter piece of the baseboard that needs to go in before then cutting up the removable section that will be lifted out and lifted in here to go on this top incline. One of the things that I've also got to do in this is take out the old beam that comes across from the wall here, and then extend this out from underneath the curved piece there and up to the edge of the lift out section here with these 2 posts that are then coming up from the lower level of the layout. Okay, so I've refixed the support beams and the timber joists across from the wall underneath this curved section here, and I've put in then the really small section onto the edge of then the lift out section here. The centerboard can just be removed like that at the moment, because what I've got to do is I've got to put in the terminal blocks on the lift out section and then on the framework on the board, and that's on both sides here, and then fix down them a bit like what I did with the previous lift out section here, and put the pins on the underside of the lift out section for the terminal blocks, and then put the framework in on the back of this section here, which will then go in a bit like that with the frame underneath and the pins to hold it still. So I'll do that, and then we'll take a look at the finished piece here for this very top incline. I've now got the framework also attached to this lift out section here, and I've screwed in the baseboard to those framework pieces underneath. This is then as simple as just lifting it out like that, and the connection is then made with obviously the terminal blocks, and I've also put some screws in on this side and on the other side here to make sure that those don't move when I'm putting the baseboard in and out here. And it is as simple as well of just putting it in like that at that end, but this end is a little bit more sort of sturdy, and it goes in like that, which is nice because it means that when I try and knock it, or when I run trains over it, it's very nice and sturdy and won't go anywhere. So the next stage for the lift out there is to put the cork underlay on and some track. The track will be powered by those terminal blocks, and then after this, the next part as well is to sort out the final lift out section, which will come across from the baseboard here, and there's a missing lift out section that needs to go in to connect it to the incline here, which if I bring it all the way around will then connect up to this incline where I'd already put the track down previously. So that's the next stage there, and we'll probably pick things up when I'm halfway through constructing this next lift out section to join the final two parts of the incline. I've now started looking at getting the last of the lift out sections completed, and this is particularly then for the plank of wood that is stretching across that used to be that length on the old removable section. That needs to be cut down, but before cutting that down I've added in some extra support framework into the sort of timber struts that are already going up to the very top level, and the one on the very far left is actually part of the original lift out section framework coming off that on the left hand side of the baseboard. So that has already given me the right height, and then I've made, shall we say, quite a tight fit at the moment for the framework pieces that are then just holding that lift out section in place, ready so that I can screw in the framework for the lift out section to be completed. So here are the additional pieces of framework that I've added in. Firstly, here on the left hand side of this lift out section, I added in a short wooden piece between the framework previously shown for the higher incline and then the framework that is actually for the incline supported off the lower level of the layout. And then I did a similar thing as well on the other side, but this time with two pieces of wood. These connect the framework from, again, the higher incline and the framework that actually comes down from the scenery level, which is above the fiddle yard. Connected those two pieces of framework together, and that's created quite a sort of fixed structure which I can then put the baseboard section on top of that framework, and that's all sort of joined up with then the framework that carries on around the corner over the top of the fiddle yard. So next I then cut down the baseboard plank that was across this section down into three pieces, two for either side of the lift out, and then the final piece would be for the middle. I added in the supporting framework for the lift out section itself in the middle, as I've done for the other inclines, and then made sure that I had a nice flush level finish across the joins for the lift out section. You'll then see here in the picture that I've got all 4 of those lift out sections now complete. There's 3 which are for inclines, and then there's the one at the very bottom which is the lower level for fiddle yard access across both sides. That then completes all of the rebuild for each of the lift out sections that I need in terms of the framework and the baseboards. I've obviously done the track work and the cork underlay and wiring up the very bottom lift out section, but I still now need to then move on and do that for the rest of the inclines.